Hi class. In this video, we're going to be going over 3 examples for the ISLM model. The first example is what happens if business taxes increase. So the first step you'll need to do is identify if this change is in the goods and services market or the money market. So business tax increase would be in the goods and services market. So we're going to look at E equals C plus I plus G. Now we know from our relationships that business taxes are in the function of investment. So if business taxes increase, investment would decrease and thus decreasing expenditure. So we know that the expenditure would fall to 2. Create our new equilibrium, E2. Now, the rest of the economy is not in equilibrium. So the next thing we're going to do is identify if we should shift the IS curve or the LM curve. Now remember, when the goods and services market has a shift, we're always going to be looking at the IS curve. So since the shift is not a change in the interest rates, it will be a shift down in IS instead of a movement along. So as business taxes increase, expenditure decreases, which will in turn decrease IS curve to meet the new equilibrium, IS2. Okay, so now we have our new interest rates, our new output at Y2, but we still are out of equilibrium in the money market due to the fact that our interest rates changed. So the next thing we're going to do is identify what has to change in the money market. Now remember, M over P, the money supply, is determined by the Federal Reserve. So that won't change because of a change in the goods and services market. What will change is money demand. So when we have a decrease in our output / income, a decrease in our real interest rates, we're also going to see a decrease in the money demand because there won't be as much velocity going around in the economy. So the money won't be working as fast because there's not a high income anymore. So this will shift down to M over D. These lines should be straight, so bear with me. Okay. Now we see an equilibrium. We have our new interest rates, our new output, and we are in equilibrium in the money market. Okay. So now let's work on another example. Let me restart this. Okay, this is not working how I wanted it to, but that's okay. We're just going to keep going and the next example will be what happens if there's an exogenous decrease in prices? So remember, if we see an exogenous decrease in prices, then we're going to be looking at the money market. So if prices decrease, we know that there's going to be an increase in the money supply. So if the number on the bottom gets smaller, the entire fraction will become larger. When this fraction becomes larger, we're going to see it shift to the right. So an increase in the money supply will be a shift to the right, to M over P2. Now remember, this is the real money supply, and this is an exogenous price shock. The next thing we're going to see is that since we have a change in the equilibrium, where R is decreased, well, we're going to look at the LM curve. So we have a shift to the right in the money supply. We're going to have a shift to the right to meet the equilibrium in the LM curve. So it should cross where the real interest rate 2 is. Now we see that we have an equilibrium in money market and an equilibrium in the ISLM model. But we're still missing an equilibrium in the goods and services market. So what we will see is that output should be to the right if we're in equilibrium. Now, in order to do this, we need to evaluate what makes this expenditure increase. So remember, as interest rates decrease, this impacts both consumption and investment. So consumption will increase and investment will increase. Please refer back to the goods and services market video to see the relationships that are built into consumption and investment. So as consumption increases and investment increases, we're going to see an increase in expenditure. And that follows along with what we have predicted to happen due to the change in the LM curve. So this will be goods and services market line 2. We will see an increase in expenditure as predicted. So overall, we have seen an increase in the output/income, a decrease in the real interest rates, all because of a change in the prices. Okay, please let me know if you have any questions regarding this example. The next example, we're just gonna try something a little different and we're going to clear all of it. Okay, so here I'm going to build the ISLM model from scratch. So you can follow along on your notes. So here is money supply and money demand in the money market. This creates the real interest rate. Below here, we're going to see the goods and services market. Remember, this is a 40-degree line that does not change. It basically says expenditure equals output/income, and we get that from the expenditure/income method in calculating GDP. Okay, we're going to bring these lines up, and we now have an equilibrium that we can draw out our ISLM curve. So icy slopes and lofty mountains. Let's finish filling in the axes. Make sure you have all your axes labeled and all your equilibriums labeled. All right, now we're going to start the third example. Okay, so our third example is what happens if government spending increases. So let me write down a few things over here. MV equals PY and E equals C plus I plus G. Okay, so we know that our government spending will increase. So we know that government spending is in the goods and services market. If government spending increases, then our expenditure will increase. Okay, so let's go here, increase our expenditure. Draw in our new equilibrium. Okay. Keep going up. Okay, so now that we see that there's a change in the goods and services market, we're going to connect that to a change in the ISLM. So here, when we increase the expenditure, we're going to see an increase in our output/income, which will in turn increase the IS curve to IS2. Okay, so now we have an equilibrium where we have interest rates at R2, expenditure at E1, and expenditure at E2, output at Y2. Now half of this is in equilibrium. We need to transfer the equilibrium to the goods or to the money market. So what we're going to do is we see an increase in the interest rates. From there, we know that money demand will have to increase to match this change in the real interest rates. So bring that over, match it up. And in theory, when there's an increase in the real interest rates, we also see, or when there's an increase in the goods and services market, so output increases and income increases, we see this increase in the real interest rates, which will in turn increase the money demand. So we could go over here to the quantity theory of money. And let's hold M and P constant because they are both controlled mainly by the Federal Reserve in the real money supply. So we know Y is increasing. Thus, the velocity will have to increase. So our money is working harder and circulating more. And this is creating a movement along the LM curve and a shift in the IS curve from the goods and services market. Now, this was what I would call crowding out. So the definition of crowding out is when the IS curve shifts to the right due to an increase in government spending. Crowding out is a decrease in consumption because of an increase in the real interest rates. People will want to save more and spend less after the government spending is increased. So if we look back at this model, people are going to end up consuming less because their government is spending more. And this is called crowding out. Okay. So that may come up again, but it's just a really easy thing to see in a model. Basically, the theory behind this is that as your government spends more, you feel less of a need to consume, well, less of a need to spend your own money, and you start saving more. So this policy may not work to stimulate the economy. If the government spends more, the people in the economy may retract the amount they spend. So it kind of evens out a lot of times. And what'll happen is that the policy put into place saying, all right, the government's going to try and stimulate the economy may not work because it would be offset by a change in consumption. Okay, so if you have any questions about these examples, please let me know. The next video will be about policy recommendations.